What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to the channel. So by now, I hope you guys have had the opportunity to check out Tom from Nerds from Yang. He recently uploaded a panel interview that myself, Patrick Kagi, Kai Watson, and Tom, of course, did with Andrew Yang himself last Friday. That video is available on his channel. And like I said, I wanted to start getting into the actual questions. I want to start today with Andrew Yang responding to my question. I'll let myself ask the question.
One of my greatest compliments to you is I love the way you think and just the way you came up with why you thought automation was just bigger than what we saw currently. But then what will often happen is you'll say things sometimes about how UBI is going to cause, it'll allow people to be able to take money, pull it together, and say do fixer-uppers or things like that. Well, if that's the case, then people could logically, just move to rural America where housing is much more affordable currently. So do you think that that's a fair statement to say that we're going to change that behavior simply by putting money in people's hands? And if you want to encourage that behavior, what would be your course of action to actually do that outside of just giving them the UBI?
These questions were designed to get Andrew Yang to give me something more out. Maybe he can't necessarily answer with a specific policy, but perhaps he can answer with a philosophy or a logic that he's using to determine what he thinks makes sense. And I'm actually going to go ahead and play his actual response.
I have a sense of the limitations of putting $1,000 a month into people's hands, where it's not going to be a magic bullet, particularly where housing is concerned. I do think that people are overstating the fact that somehow landlords are going to increase your rent by $700 if you pay $1,000 a month. But it's also correct that it's not like people are infinitely mobile. One of the things that scares me right now is that interstate migration rates are at multi-decade lows. People are not moving anymore. And when you move, there are many positive things, both economically and socially. It's one reason I'm proposing an American exchange program where we send high school seniors like Kai to other parts of the country for a month plus so that they get a sense as to what another way of life is in another part of the country. And so you can try and increase dynamism. Now this is trying to spur what people will do on their own. We also need to help people that are frankly just right now outside of the system, because there are so many people who are struggling with homelessness or substance abuse or mental illness where $1,000 a month does not help them get back on their feet in any meaningful way. What it does is it actually starts putting resources in the work, resources in the hands of nonprofits and agencies that are trying to do the work to help those people get off their feet. And it was someone who worked in homelessness services who told me the first thing we do when we find a homeless person is figure out if they're entitled to any government benefits, because they're trying to find ways to pay for helping that person. So if everyone was worth $1,000 a month, then the number of programs, Aaron, that would help people solve these problems would all of a sudden surge, because you'd have actual resources to reward those organizations doing the work.
That is Andrew Yang's response to my question. And how do I feel about that answer? First of all, I was pleasantly surprised. Primary thing he actually mentioned was this American exchange program. It's a program we don't really talk enough about, but after hearing his response, I was intrigued in the way he put it into this particular answer, because a lot of the reasons that people don't move across the country is because they have no interest in doing so. They don't know anything outside of their bubble. Most people don't leave their hometown. Also, as he mentioned, helps with dynamism, like helping us to feel human connection with people outside of our own little sphere of influence. So I really thought that was a great response. Also, the fact that it focuses on the younger generation. The program is supposed to be a 6-week program, I guess, where you would get out and, travel the country a little bit. That's a luxury for most people. Everybody doesn't get the ability to actually get out and travel. And we see this in Europe, where it's quite common for people to, hop on the train, see different countries, different cultures. We don't typically do that. We're in America. We're fairly isolated. Maybe you do Cancun or something like that. Maybe you do Canada when you're 19. But other than that, most of us aren't really doing too much getting out and exploring the rest of the world. If you're going to leave your home, you're probably going to want to go to LA, Vegas, Miami, New York, or Chicago. It's a very short list. It's not Idaho, Wisconsin, Missouri. Like, there's a lot of places that people aren't trying to go to. So I think this program will be an amazing idea. we don't have very robust opinions of things because we haven't seen enough. Now, he also did not mention this particular thing. And again, my question was specifically about housing, okay? It's about housing, it's about changing behavior. You know, I'm simply skeptical that $1,000 a month is going to change behavior because I don't believe that behavior can be changed that simply. And that is my opinion. That's always been my opinion. That's always why I've been skeptical of a program that one of the benefits would be, oh, people are going to do this thing they've never done before. This is a thing that he didn't specifically mention, but I will go ahead and add this on his behalf, which is making it easy for Americans to move for work. Like, moving is expensive. If you're talking about moving across the country, sure, you get an extra $1,000 a month or $12,000 a year, but how do we make that more feasible? Well, how about we give you $1,000 to help you with relocation expenses? Now, $1,000 is not that much when we talk about moving across the country, but it definitely helps. I think when I took my U-Haul, I rented a U-Haul the first time I moved, and I think it was about $800 to, I went like 1,200 miles or something like that. It won't cover you to have the people come and pack up all your stuff for you, the fancy moving service, but it will help you to get where you're going. So again, I'm gonna go ahead and throw that in there with him, with his response, and I'm gonna give him that. However, his response then went into, he started talking about the homeless population and making sure that we're addressing the people who aren't even really engaged. And honestly, I'm not even gonna focus on that because that really wasn't my question. Good stuff there, but not my concern. My concern, not my concern with this particular question. A lot of people talk about UBI, they compare it to Bernie Sanders' federal jobs guarantee, and I think these are horrible comparisons because I believe, I could be wrong, but this is my assumption. UBI is supposed to address wage stagnation. Okay, so Brookings report, okay, they just did a study. 53 million Americans between 18 and 64, or 44% of the workforce, yearly earns a median average of $18,000 a year. So if that is your situation, $12,000 a year helps, but we're simply addressing the fact that you have needs that aren't being met currently because it costs more than $18,000 to live in this country. As a black man in America, okay, statistically, black people are on the bottom. Brown people are on the bottom, okay? So whatever happens to white people is going to happen to other people worse. So I need to make sure that your policies, which are probably going to disproportionately affect my community, have some provisions in there so housing doesn't become a big issue, okay? Because what's not going to happen is you're going to get an extra $1,000 a month and everybody who I know is going to move to your neighborhood. You're not going to let that happen. So while Andrew did laugh off the idea that rent's going to go up an extra $700 a month, I don't think it'll go up $700, but I do think it'll go up $250. And what I wanted from him was something that says, this is how we're going to encourage people to do something that they've never done. You can flourish even if you don't get to flourish where you may have typically desired to. At the end of the day, what he's offering is still better than what's out there, okay? And we're talking about the unknown, because this is really what this is all about. We're talking about uncharted territory, a system where people are being treated differently, where you're getting something where the incentives of capitalism are different. So I still feel like this is better than anything you're ever going to get anyway. Yang definitely hinted at the fact that when money is in the hands of people, there will be new opportunities. And I think we've talked about, you know, tiny homes in these different communities. So there's definitely going to be some of that. There's going to be opportunities that are created because of people having additional funds. But like I said, 44% of Americans are already making $18,000 a year. You just catching up, man. You just getting to a point where you're like, all right, great, I can get some life insurance. Don't get it twisted. We're not saying, no, Andrew, we don't want your money. But I'm just letting you know, some of y'all will be living in Missouri, all right? You're not all moving to Chicago. Somebody has to take a L for the team. Maybe it's gonna be those medical professionals who get to do different forms of medicine that they couldn't previously practice because Andrew has lightened up regulations so they can do different things that they could do before. So those people move to some of those rural areas. But somebody is moving to rural America. It might be you. Yeah, again, my goal was to get him responses that we can use to get votes. There were definitely things that I could have asked that would have been pretty substantive or would have given us information, but I was just like, what's gonna get me some votes? What's gonna get me to convince somebody? What's the question that people are asking me in real life?